that I see myself?
If you have the opportunity to sit down with someone that's like in their 30s, 40s, and they're having this moment of crisis where they're getting paid well at their job, or they're dividing the task within their profession, but they're not fulfilling the goals or the life lessons that they feel they have for their career and their life. What would you want to tell someone in the midst of maybe they're at a point where they feel like they can't transition to a different career or a different job, but they're not loving what they do? What advice or what piece of, maybe information would you want to tell someone that is maybe in the midst of their past career, but are still struggling to find that love in doing what they do, and are maybe finding
Mm.
the love and energetic pieces in other things in their lives?
Yeah, again, a really insightful question. There's probably different angles to the diamond of change and transition. Like one of them would be, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like what do you want? A preliminary question is, who are you?
Hmm.
And so like figuring you out, like you're the puzzle, you got to figure you out. And if you could sort of emotionally detach yourself from who you are and just kind of lay on a table in some ways and like let someone dissect you a little bit. Well, what if you could sort of do that for yourself and say, well, who am I? What would someone do with the skills, talents, and natural ability that I have? What would someone like me do for a living? And so just sort of like take that out of body experience and just kind of lay yourself on the surgical table and just say, well, who am I? Like, what would a person with my skill set and talent do for a living? And I think that's like the identity question, like, who am I? It's probably the most important one that you can ask yourself. This next question would be, well, what do I want? And that's a really crucial question. So I think a lot of people are constantly asking themselves, even subconsciously, well, what does everyone else around me want me to be?
Hmm.
And where do I get my affirmation from? And if I get affirmed by being a certain way or doing certain behaviors, then I'll get people to like me. But it's not really helpful because the crowd around you changes. They have different demands that they might place on you, or they might like different aspects of your personality, but it's really not worth fashioning your life over. And so answering the question, what do I want, is like a really big one. And me being a person of faith, I'd always say, well, God, what do you want me to do? Like, and even if you're not spiritual, you could still ask yourself the existential question, like, why am I here? Like, what should I do with my life? What's my purpose? And I think that's the question of saying, like, what do I want, is really important, because if it's identity based, then you can, well, let me draw the distinction. If it's passion based and you just follow your passions, well, I don't know about you, but my passions change over time.
Yes,
So
sir.
I might be passionate about something for a while, but be passionate about something else. So being passion driven is not really that helpful, but being identity driven is actually exceptionally helpful, because the
Yeah.
things that you are based on your identity, you're probably pretty good at those things already. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It's kind of like, a bird flying into the wind versus a bird that just sort of floats on the wind. So you're already good at those things, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. And so you can kind of float a little bit into it. So my question would be is like, well, who are you and what do you want? And that answering that question is crucial, because if you don't know what you want, you'll always be hesitant and unsure of pursuing it. And if you're unsure or uncertain of pursuing something, you won't have the stamina or the resilience to kind of keep going when it gets tough, because the tough times are going to come. But if you have that sense of like, no, this is who I am and this is what I want, well, you're answering two massive questions that are absolutely necessary to figuring out where you should go with your life in your 20s and 30s. And so after you answer, who am I and what do I want, the third one is, well, why do I want it? And there's a great book by Simon Sinek, it's about, know your why, right? Start with why. But it was really interesting. I learned this from Pete Carroll from the Seattle Seahawks and now the Raiders, is he said, Gary, it starts with why, but it ends with who. So who is your why? So for a lot of NFL players, it is like, well, I want this for, I want to buy a house for my mom. or I want to provide for my family, or, I have a grandmother or some other significant person or a spouse or a loved one. Maybe that's their who. And so
Yeah.
if you tie it to a who, it becomes very emotional, and we're emotional beings. So that can be really valuable. So it's know who you are, know what you want, know why you want it. And then finally, I hate to say this, but it's just true. It's how badly do you want it? And if you want something really badly, you'll sacrifice a lot for it. But if you're just willing to put in a minimal amount of effort toward what you want, it's probably not enough. So answering those 4 questions in your 20s and 30s about thinking about, like, can I do a transition? Well, yeah, of course you can do a transition. Listen, quitting is one of the best things you could ever learn to do in your life. It sounds so strange to say it that way, but there's a great book by Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings, and it's learning that quitting is one of the smartest things you can possibly do. And we think, well, so much of our emotional well-being is tied to, in our identity of not being a quitter or not being someone who transitions all the time. Listen, quitting is one of the smartest things you can possibly do. And if you can sort of detach yourself from the emotional baggage that comes along with quitting, listen, doing something that's not healthy for you is really smart. People do this in business all the time. They see something that's not working because it's not producing the finances that they need to sustain the business. And if they don't quit that really quickly, then their business is going to go under. So quitting is one of the most wonderful, beautiful things that you can